Hey everyone, this is the Black Manga Critic, and I'm back with a review of the Promised Neverland chapter 59. So this again, this is another chapter in which you really see just how much the mangaka duo in Shirai and Pasuka really are attempting to tackle all of these different issues that are very much so real world issues, right? And it's almost apt that a chapter about guns and guns in the hands of children, and or just guns in the hands of individuals that probably shouldn't be using guns to kill other things, right? Other living things, would happen at a point in America where we just had one of the biggest, if not the biggest, mass shooting to have it happen in modern day history, right? So it's a very apt chapter. I'm not sure if Shirai and Pasuka are aware of it necessarily. But if they are, kudos to them for having this chapter and really sort of going into the conversation that is gun control and things of that nature. So I'm not gonna say necessarily how I feel about that stuff, anything like that. But if you want to have a conversation with that, that's fine. But I do think it's very much of apt that Shirai and Pasuka do talk about weapons in the hands of individuals that probably shouldn't be using them versus weapons in the hands of individuals that have gone through loads and loads of training and are have a sound mind and psychologically are stable, and really know what the fuck they're doing and aren't looking to kill other people or anything like that, right? So I think that this chapter is really great because Emma has a really really poignant moment where she's thinking oh shit, there's this massive weapons cache, and Ray also is thinking did Minerva keep this shit here for kids? It was a really good thing because I had mentioned that in the last review, and I was yo, this is kind of sad, but at the same time, right, this is a world in which this is a very necessary kind of evil in a sense, or right, or necessary ethical sort of breach of ethics or whatever, you know what I mean? It's very much necessary because there are all these demons who are incredibly dangerous, running around, and Emma's sort of this naive Emma kind of again sort of saying okay, I probably don't need these high powered weapons or anything like that. I could just use my bow and arrow, and she sort of comes up with this logical reason as to why she should continue to use the bow and the arrow. But it's I don't know. I'm not really sure what those bows and arrows are gonna do to all these souped up demons that are and poachers that are roaming the demon world outside of the forest that they just escaped, right? It's stuff like that. I think that Emma's clearly very intelligent, but there's a way in which her intelligence sometimes allows her to come up with these weird illogical sort of things, but she kind of logics, she tries to logic out the illogical. It's yo, that bow and arrow is not going to do shit for most against most of these demons, but I think there's a way in which yeah, she can use it to hunt and stuff like that, and that's all great, but at the same time it's yo, Emily, you kind of playing yourself. You might need to grab a pistol or or something like that, or and a knife to really defend yourself, so I think there's also an interesting way in which Ray kind of takes it upon himself to sort of say hey, let's figure something out. Okay, I understand, Emma, clearly you don't like weapons like these and things of that nature, so I think they're and she also just got shot at, right? So that probably affected her in some way, you know what I mean? So I think there's a way in which she's I don't really want to use weapons like that, firearms or anything like that. But Ray sort of say okay, you do your thing, and you're really smart. I'm sure you can figure something out. But Ray takes it upon himself to grab the weapon, to not only to protect Emma, to protect himself, and to make sure that he can fight demons in some sort of way, right? So I think it was interesting that interaction between Ray and Emma. That was really great. That's sort of way in which sometimes people are forced, let's say maybe they've grown up with certain families and stuff like that. Some people are forced to maybe they're kids that don't want to go hunting. They don't want to kill animals or anything like that. And their parents are big hunters and everything like that. And there's a tradition of hunting in their family, and maybe those kids don't want to do that. So there are tons of instances in which children are forced to use weapons that they really don't want to use or have anything to do with or anything like that. That's not to say like you can't teach like a like 15-year-old like to use a weapon properly and to like appreciate living things and everything like that or whatever. You know what I mean? But like I do think there is a way in which like this chapter again like reinforces the need for conversations about guns and firearms and the ethical conversations surrounding guns and firearms. So yeah, that's pretty much what I had to say about that instance. I think that like the other thing I really wanted to talk about was like Gilda. That was the best thing about this chapter. There was like the gun stuff was like awesome and it was great and it was cool because it was so apt and very much so relates to what's going on here in America, and I think in other countries too. But we're also like we also got to look at Gilda because Gilda was like fire in this chapter. Gilda was all fucking fire. Again, this is the chapter that really reinforces women, the fact that like and like right like not only Gilda but what was her name, Anna, I believe. Like there was another character, right? Like she was helping Ray with his wound and everything like that, and like Ray thanked her and like made her feel like she was needed because she is needed, right? She's another character, she's another child that is a very integral part of this family, right? So again, like Sharon Pasuka do great work in that sense. But to get back to Gilda was phenomenal this chapter. She was fantastic. She was such a bright light. She was badass. She was badass in a way that like Emma would really be badass, but in a calmer and like warmer sort of way. Oddly enough, right? It's like there are some people that are like, and this makes me think about people in my life that I know that are like very warm and kind, and loving, but are also like extreme badasses. Like I had a professor. I had a professor when I was doing my associates years back, and like now she's one of my really good friends, and like and she's like really warm and kind, but like a super like badass. You know what I mean? This is like Gilda like reminds me of her in a lot of ways. Like she just was like, you know what? I'm gonna fucking blow up this shelter if you fuck with my family. And it was like, yeah, it was so cool. It was so cool. Like I really enjoyed that part. It was phenomenal. And I think that there's a way in which like Gilda has been watching Emma, right? Like Gilda has clearly been watching Emma, has clearly grown to admire her and adore her and love her as a sister, right? And so like she was like, yo, like if Emma's willing to go to these lengths to protect our family, I also have to go to similar lengths to protect my family. So like to protect our family. So like shit, man, she was just like, yo, like you know what, I'm gonna ask you kindly right? So like, I'm gonna ask Teacup Guy kindly to protect my family, and and then Teacup Guy was like, who is this like little like super nice like girl with the glasses like trying to tell me and give me like ultimatums, or trying to give me like a like false ultimatum or whatever. And then Gilda's just like, well, I asked you kindly, and I asked you kindly because like I'm a kind person, but if you don't protect Emma and Ray, or if you don't protect at least one of them, I will blow up this shelter. And it was just like, like it was so good. It's like, this is like family, right? Family is like, like when you have like family, this is like, regardless of blood ties or anything like that, right? DNA, whatever. Like family, are like people that are like, they will like legit, die for you. They'll take a bullet for you. They'll do a lot of shit for you that like most people wouldn't do. You know what I mean? So like Gil's like, yo, like don't worry, Emma, I got you. You said you were gonna blow up the shelter, but you're not gonna be here to blow up the shelter. So I'm gonna be here just in case Teacup Guy fucks up, and I'm gonna blow up the shelter for you. Like like kudos to Gilda. Gilda was fantastic this chapter. And again, this is another chapter, and like this manga in general, is not about like being like, oh, women can't do anything, they're frail, they're weak, they're fragile, they're like not interesting, they don't deserve to be at the forefront of larger narratives and mini narratives. Like no, like Gilda was at the forefront of this fucking chapter. You know what I mean? Like this chapter was clearly like, to me, focused on the woman of the Promised Neverland, and like again, it's just like it's really good shit. Because most Shonen Jump fucking manga don't do that. And like to say that like Shonen Jump is catered towards boys, so like oh, they have to like have boys and like mostly men in like the forefront of their manga. Like that's bullshit. That's like a bullshit argument. It doesn't make much sense. Unless you're like sexist, misogynistic. You know what I mean? Like so, and bigoted. So I really appreciated this chapter, and again, I appreciate everything about the Promised Neverland. And just to quickly talk about the art a little bit. I love the way that like there's a like Pasuka's great at like subtlety, right? There's a way in which like when Pasuka draws Gilda, Gilda still exudes right. Her aesthetic is still warm, loving, kind, but everything that she's saying is very much so badass and intense and sharp, right? It's like like don't fuck with my family, but everything about Gilda is like like. I really appreciate that, and like the art is necessary in that sense, right? Because if you don't really have the art, like there's a way in which the language doesn't read as like kind, warm, loving Gilda, right? Like sensitive Gilda, right? So there's a way in which Pasuka draws Gilda in that sense, and also I don't know if I'm right, but I think her name is Anna, but like the girl that might be like blonde and like she has like light eyes, and that was helping Ray with his wound, like Pasuka draws her like is this like very brightly, right? Like there's a way in which like when characters are genuinely like good, not necessarily pure, but like more innocent than others, like they just tend to be brighter, right? They just tend to be like they tend to emit more light in that aesthetic sense. So I really appreciate the way Pasuka like subtly does those things, where like the art really captures the characters like personalities and ways of thinking and things of that nature, and projects them in a way that allows us to really like capture a feeling for the characters without them saying too much. So I always appreciate Pasuka for that. That's pretty much all I wanted to talk about in terms of the Promised Neverland. Chapter 59, again another great chapter, very apt chapter with what's going on in America. Gilda was a fucking badass. Emma was again like very cool, like a little naive, but like Emma will figure some shit out because she's a fucking genius, right? And Anna was like another character, like right, another of the children that again Shirai and Pasuka have introduced in a way that's like subtle but has impact, right? Because we want to know like the kids. I want to know the kids. Like the kids are important. They're vital, right? And not only are Shirai and Pasuka telling us that like right, like through their writing and artistry, right, that these kids are, that all the kids are important, but like Ray says, like you are vital to this family, right? Like that's stuff that like we have to consistently see. We have to consistently see, even if the kids aren't there, right? Even if they're traveling. I'd really like to see, Shirai and Pasuka continue to like tell a narrative while the kids are at the shelter, and what Ray and Emma and Teacup Guy are doing, like on their own. And I also want to see what's going on at the Gracefield house. We haven't been there in a while. I want to see what's going on with Phil. Phil was, MVP for a while. Like when we didn't know what the hell was going on with Phil, we thought Phil was like, a crazy, crazy savant, right? So like I want to see what's going on in the Gracefield house. I'm really interested in seeing that. So, I'm the Black Manga Critic with a review of the Promised Neverland chapter 59, and I'm out.